Good evening, everybody. My name is Bill Graham. Welcome back to my channel. Tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about improvising on John Coltrane's tune Giant Steps. Now this is often regarded as a very difficult tune to play on, but it's really not that hard. So let's dig in and get right into it. So this tune moves through 3 key centers. I think a lot of you probably already know this, but it moves through the keys of B, G, and E flat. And so we need to, first of all, see the pattern of where the key changes are. So maybe I'll just play through the tune one time first. So I'll talk us through it. Starts on the 1 chord of B, and then we've got a 5-1 in G, that's down a major third. 5-1 into E flat, it's down another major third. And then we've got a 2-5 back into G, so back up a major third. That's our first phrase. And then the next phrase is the same thing down a major third. So now we've got the 1 chord in G, the 5-1 in E flat, down a major third, and then a 5-1 in B, down another major third. Okay? And then a 2-5-1 back up a major third into E flat. Notice, I'm going to stop for a second. Notice that every time there's a 5-1, it's down a major third. And every time there's a 2-5-1, it's up a major third. So let's see, we've gone through the first half of the tune, right? So 1 in B, 5-1 down a major third in G, 5-1 down a major third in E flat. 2-5-1 back up a major third in G, all right? 5-1 down a major third in E flat, 5-1 down a major third in B. 2-5-1 back up a major third in E flat, 2-5-1 up another major third into G, 2-5-1 up another major third into B, 2-5-1 up another major third into E flat, and this is the one time that the pattern changes. There's a final 2-5 back into B, which is back down a major third again. So that's the only time that we've had a 2-5 going down a major third. Every time we've had a 5 going down a major third. So that's all making pretty good sense, right? So the first thing that I want to show you about is something I was messing around with last night. This is so easy. All we're going to do is play the tonic triad of each of those key centers. I'm going to keep moving the changes in my left hand, but in my right hand, I'm going to just improvise on, so when we're on the B major 7 chord, I'm only going to be thinking about B major triad. Okay? Now when we've got D7 to G major 7, I'm just going to be thinking about the G triad. 5-1 into E flat, I'm just thinking about my E flat triad. And so this is, you'll be surprised how much it works. I wouldn't play like it for a whole solo, but maybe for the first chorus or two, it's kind of a nice little approach. Let me see if I can play a little bit like that for you. Mess that up a little bit. So you see what I'm doing there? I'm not just literally only playing the triad notes, I'm playing some approaches into them. Let's see if we can be kind of systematic about that. So one chord, B major 7. Let me play a one note approach into that arpeggio. And then on the D7, I'm going to come down just a G major triad. Okay. Right, that'll make sense. Hold on. Pick and Stone. Love how Barry Harris explains soloing on giant steps. Everything is tied to melodic architecture. It's not play this arpeggio. Chord scale, it's how to build melodic line. Yeah, exactly. So what we're looking at really is just the key center that we're playing in, rather than really trying to think about every last chord. There's too many chords going by to be able to think about a different scale on every chord. And in fact, let's go over the scales that Barry is going to talk about on this tune. Those triad approaches were making sense to you, right? If anyone has any questions about it, maybe I can come back around later. But okay, so the chords on this tune go by so fast, I'm going to slow the form down, or I'm going to slow the chords down to half the speed they normally go by, so we can take a look at what scales go with them. Now, like I said, because the chords go by so quickly, we don't have time to think about scales. But we're going to be playing, the things that we're going to be playing are technically fragments of scales. So I want to show you what the scales are so you can think about those little fragments as you're playing them. So when we're on the one chord, and okay, one more thing. If you don't know, Barry shows his scale outlines like this. So we're going to play up the scale to the 7th. Don't come back down. We're not going to go all the way up to the octave. If the scale lasts for two bars, we're going to go back. We're going to go up to the 7th and back down. Not all the way up to the octave. Okay. So slowing the changes of giant steps down. We're on B major 7. We're going to come up a B major scale. Now this next chord is D7. We're going to come up a D7 scale. And then we come up a G major 7 scale, or a G major scale, excuse me. Now what is the difference between a D7 scale and a G major scale? It's subtle. It's really only where you're going to put the half steps. Okay, so if you know the half step rules, on a dominant chord, the half steps come between the tonic and 7th, or if there's going to be 3 half steps, they can go between the 3rd and 2nd, 2nd and tonic and 7th. But if we're on a major chord, let's take that same scale, D7, and think of it from its actual tonic, which is G major. Well, in the G major scale, instead of those half steps being between D and C, or E and D and D and C, or F sharp and E, E and D and D and C, now they're going to be between E and D primarily, because they're going to be between the 6th and the 5th. Right? Or if we put 3 half steps, it'll be between the 3rd and the 2nd, 2nd and tonic, and 6th and 5th. So essentially the notes are the same, but where we put those half steps is going to be different. So all right, getting back to the scale outline for giant steps. B major, we're going to go up B major. D7, up D7. G major, up G major. Up, let's see here. So up B major, up D7, up G major, up B flat 7, and then up and down E flat major. Now over the A minor 7 to D7. Remember, he doesn't think about the 2 chord, because to him the 2 chord is built into the 5 chord. So instead of thinking A minor 7 to D7, he's just going to think D7. All right, G major up, B flat 7 up, E flat major up, F sharp 7 up, B major up and down, over F minor 7 to B flat 7, to B flat 7 up and down, E flat major up and down, A minor 7 to D7, that's going to be D7 up and down, G major up and down, C sharp minor 7 to F sharp 7, that's going to be F sharp 7 up and down, B major up and down, F minor 7 to B flat 7, that's B flat 7 up and down, E flat major up and down, and then finally C sharp minor 7 to F sharp 7, again, is going to be F sharp 7 up and down. Okay? So B major up, D7 up, G major up, B flat 7 up, E flat major up and down, D7 up and down, G major up, B flat 7 up, E flat major up, F sharp 7 up, B major up and down, B flat 7 up and down, E flat major up and down, D7 up and down, G major up and down, F sharp 7 up and down, B major up and down, E flat or B flat 7 up and down, E flat major up and down, F sharp 7 up and down. Okay, so obviously if we're going at speed, there's no way that we can cram all those scales in. Ah. There's no way that we're going to be able to do that. But we're going to be playing fragments of all of those scales because those are the key centers that we're playing in. So before we look at seventh chords, let's take a look at the triads that live in those chords, right? So superimposing different triads. If we look at a B major chord, for example, first of all, Barry tells us that there are 7 chords in this scale, but we're not going to name them, right? Of course we know about playing on the 1 chord, playing on the 3 chord, playing on the 5 chord, but that's not what we're talking about here. So a really important sound in bebop soloing is play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, right? So you're going to end up with these diatonic arpeggios, right? It's B major 7, C sharp minor 7, D sharp minor 7, E major 7, F sharp 7, G sharp minor 7, A sharp minor 7 flat 5, and B major 7. But Barry tells us there's no way, or we don't need to name those chords in this context. What we need to know is that we can start on any note of the scale and go up in thirds, and then come down the scale, or not. But you know, so he doesn't need to call that B major 7, even though it obviously is, and he knows it's B major 7. Everybody knows that's B major 7, but try and not think about it as a chord that has a name right now. Just think about coming up the tonic from the key center that you're on, right? Or coming up in thirds from the 3rd of the chord you're on, or even coming up from the 5th or the 7th. Right? Does that make sense? So we could do that not only on the chord tones, but also on the other scale tones in between. is, first of all, let's play those in the 3 keys that we've got in this song. So we've got it in B, we've got it in G, we've got it in E flat. So what we've got to practice are these little fragments of coming up one of these arpeggios. Barry calls them chords. Please, if you're someone that goes to his class a lot, correct me, but I believe that his nomenclature is that if it's a 4-note arpeggio, what we would call arpeggio, 4 notes, he's going to call it a chord, and if it's 3 notes, he'll call it an arpeggio. In my nomenclature, I tend to call that 3-note chord a triad, and use the word arpeggio interchangeably to refer to a 3-note chord or a 4-note chord. But that's okay. So, if we look at those chords that we can find, really the important ones are going to be, for a major chord, they're going to be the one that's on the root, the one that's on the 3rd, that's going to be giving you the 3rd, 5th, and 7th of your major 7 chord. Okay, if we play the one that's on the 5th, that gives you the 5th, major 7th, and 9th of a major 7th chord. Excuse me. And if we come up this one, that's a diminished triad, right? And that's very much sounding like a D7 chord or the 5 chords. If you come up that one, you're actually making some motion from 5 to 1 on top of the existing key, or the existing chord, right? So maybe you're on that G major 7 chord, and you play, right? What just happened? That's basically outlining the 5 chord, and then I came down just the tonic triad, 2nd inversion, landed on the 3rd of the chord, came up in 3rds. I'm not thinking of this as B minor 7 or as G major 9. I'm just thinking about we're on the 1 chord in the key of G. I landed on the 3rd of the chord. I'm coming up in 3rds. There I just surrounded it with a chromatic enclosure. Maybe I play a 3-note enclosure, 1 above and 2 below. Right? You got to practice all of those different approaches into these things. But, okay, so like I said, the 3 triads that are going to be really important to play on this 1 chord, to make a 1 chord kind of a sound, are first of all the triad that you get on the root. Let's play a single note approach from below into every inversion of that chord. And then coming down, right? Let's play 1 diatonic note above, 1 chromatic note below. Okay. What if we did that on that chord that we find on the 3rd? Great. What if we did it on the chord that we find on the 5th? Gives you that, quote, major 9 sound. Okay. So those are the important triads that you want to practice on the major chords, or on the 1 chords. Okay. Let's take a look at the 5 chords. So let's look at the we start on B major, then we're going to D7, right? So if we take our D7 scale, which remember is the same thing as the G major scale we just played, okay, the important triads that we're going to find here are the one on the root, the one on the 5th, triad on the 5th. That gives you the 5th of the chord, the 7th, and the 9th. It's what Barry calls the important minor. And then also the triad on the 7th, which in the key of, in the D7 scale, right, or on a D7 chord, the 7th of the chord is a C. So we're going to come up a C triad. Right? What was I just playing there? I was coming up a C triad, coming down a D triad. You may have seen that kind of playing referred to as triad pairs. Okay, let's mess around with that a little bit. What if we played some approaches into each one of those? Let's say we're going to play a half step below each one of these. So I'm going to play a C chord, then come down a D chord, come down a C, up a D, down a C. Okay? Let's see what that sounds like a little quicker. Okay, let's practice that one more time, a little slower. That make sense? What if we were going between the D and the A minor? Okay, let's see what happens there. Because there's a note in common between those two chords, it doesn't sound like there's as much change, but so again, we're not really thinking of that chord as a chord that has a name. I'm not thinking of that necessarily as being called A minor, although of course we know it's called A minor. But I'm just thinking of it as being the chord that you find on the 5th of the 5 chord. There's the 5th, and now I'm just going to come up in thirds. Or go to the 7th of the chord, come up in thirds. Okay, so I'm going to play a little bit on giant steps, just using those triad concepts. So when I'm on a 1 chord, I'm going to be thinking about the triad that's on the root, or the triad that's on the 3rd. In fact, let's try and limit it to this for right now. I'm going to think about the triad that's either on the root or the 3rd. And when I'm on a 5 chord, I'm going to be thinking about the triad that's either on the root, on the flat 7, or the minor chord that's on the 5th. In fact, I'm going to limit it to just 2. I'm going to think about either. Now, I'll leave all 3 of those open. So those options are going to be, when we're on B major 7, you can think a B triad, a D sharp minor triad, although don't think about it like that. Just think about it as the chord that you find on the 3rd, the chord you find on the 5th. On D7, we're going to think the chord you find on the root, the chord you find on the 5th, the chord you find on the 7th, G major on the root, on the 3rd. What do we just play? B, D7, G. Okay, B flat 7. We're going to think B flat triad, right? Triad on the root, triad on the 5th, triad on the 7th, E flat major, triad on the root, triad on the 3rd, triad on the 5th. A minor 7, okay, triad on the root, triad on the 3rd, triad on the 5th, triad on the 7th. But really, we don't even have to think about the A minor 7. We only have to think about the D7. So when we go A minor 7 to D7, you just have to think about the D, the A minor, or the C. Right? The A minor and the C, what do those two chords make up? They make up A minor 7. So that's what Barry's talking about when he says that the 2 chord is built into the 5 chord. You don't have to think about the 2 chord, because it's right there. So when we play A minor 7 to D7, you just have to think about D7. We're going to find those triads inside of the D7. Okay. We haven't covered E flat yet, right? So on E flat we've got, no, we just covered that one, right? And on the B flat 7 we've got, excuse me, our B flat triad, our F minor triad, or triad on the 5th, A flat triad on the 7th. Okay. So I'm going to improvise a little bit on Giant Steps using just those options. Okay? So did that all make sense where I was generating all of that? Played a couple of wrong notes just because I lost focus a little bit. Oh, thank you so much, Sydney. I appreciate it. So let's start talking about the half steps that we can play here. Again, because the chords are going by so fast, we don't have time to think about every chord that's going by, or even to play these whole scales. But when we do come across a spot in the scale that we can add half steps, that's a great thing to do. So let's see here. The way that we have to do that is that we've got to connect these scales together. Have you ever seen that video where Barry is talking about playing on this tune? And he's talking about how if you're playing rhythm changes, you need to basically be able to start up at the top of the piano and play a descending scale line anyway. The idea, that wasn't very good, but that if you start up at the top of the piano, you know where all the half steps go, and you can just keep going. And with Giant Steps, you can really basically do the same thing. So if I played starting up here, let's say I started all the way up at B, right? I'm going to play basically 3 notes of that B major scale before I've got to think about the D7 or G major, same thing. Now I got to transition into B flat 7, E flat major, right? D7, G major. I'm running out of room. Let's start back over a B major. B flat 7. Got to play a little enclosure to make that work out. Let's come up a chord down with 3 half steps. sharp 7 this time. We land on the 7th. Okay, anyway, so what am I playing there? I'm just playing those scales and I'm connecting them. Playing the scales and I'm playing the arpeggios that live inside of those scales. What do we got? It's a B swell on saxophone, but easier to visualize on keyboards. Yeah, you know, I play a lot of, or a couple of different instruments at least. I play guitar too and bass, and it's so much easier to visualize everything on the piano. I can't imagine even picking up another instrument if I didn't play the piano, or understanding anything about harmony or how to play on chords. It's just so logically laid out on the piano. So I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but everybody that plays any instrument, whether you're a saxophonist or a trumpet player or a violinist or anything, you've got to at least play a little bit of piano because it's where everything is all laid out. It's just so obvious here. Yeah, descending all the way also suggests that he's hearing in larger chunks and not just a chord here and there. Yeah, absolutely. You know, getting back to the thing talking about rhythm changes, it's funny, there's so many chords in rhythm changes, just like there's so many chords in giant steps, but I had so much trouble playing on rhythm changes coming up because I would look at every chord and think that I had to play something specific on every one of those chords. I was thinking, oh, geez, man, we got B flat major to G minor to C minor 7 to F7, D minor 7 to G7 to C minor 7 to F7 to B flat major to maybe F minor 7, B flat 7 to E flat major, E flat minor 6, or E diminished to B flat, okay, G7 to C minor 7 to F7. It goes by so fast. How are you supposed to think about that? You can't. What you should think about is that whole A section, okay, B flat to G minor 7. What's that? That's B flat major. C minor 7 to F7. What's that? That's F7. Right, so it's B flat major to F7. Well, B flat major and F7 are the same thing. So you could really, and you hear cats play this on older recordings. The rhythm section will be playing 1-6-2-5, 3-6-2-5, and the soloist is just thinking about that B flat major triad, right? So like they'll be playing right, like, and obviously that's a little bit older style than the bebop kind of thing I normally talk about, but you listen to swing records, like that's what Lester Young plays on the A sections of rhythm changes. Django too, you listen to these cats, they'll be playing so it's like the only chord they're really acknowledging other than the B flat is the E flat to E flat minor kind of thing. Obviously the bridge just going through those dominant chords. But so same thing on giant steps. You know, there are all these chords, but don't think about all those chords. Just think about making a connection, playing melodic on it, playing melodically. Yes, absolutely. Sing it before you play it. Sing it before I play it and think of the home key. Everything else is creating movement and tension between the key. Absolutely, picking stone. You're thinking about the B7, the B natural as a flat 2. Yeah, so on that, when you're in the key of B flat, you got the G7. Just think about that as that diminished, which we've got a lot to say about that diminished chord, of course, right? Because we know that's where all of the roots of the family of 4 dominants come from. So I don't know that I've talked about this on this channel, actually, but it's really important to play that diminished 7 arpeggio on the 3rd of a dominant chord. I'm sure everyone plays that already, but like if we're on F7, think about, okay, the 3rd is A. I'm going to come up that A diminished 7th chord, because that's the diminished that we get all of the related dominants from, right? If you lower the F sharp, it's F7. You lower the E flat, it's D7. You lower the C, it's B7. You lower the A, it's A flat 7. So that's where we get a lot of beautiful substitutions that we can play on it. But I don't want to ramble about that too much right now. But yes, absolutely, it's important to be able to sing these things before you play them, or as you play them. And it's important to not trick yourself into thinking that you're singing, that you're playing what you're singing, when sometimes you're actually singing what you're playing. And that seems like maybe a subtle distinction, but it's really important. So I say this all the time to my students, but singing your lines is like showing your work in math class. You know, if you can sing it, that means that you can really hear it. And if you can really hear it, then that's something worth playing. Or maybe it's not even worth playing, but at least you can hear it. At least it's what you heard in your head, and that's a start. So it's easy to trick yourself if your ear isn't that developed yet to play something and then find it real quick with your voice. But that's not the idea. You're trying to generate it in your mind and move it from your mind to your voice and your fingers all at the same time. Let's see, what's that, Mark? Speaking of singing, do you use solfege? So this is funny. I was just talking with my sister about this earlier. I can use solfege. I far prefer the numbers, just because that's what I came up doing. So I find that a little bit more comfortable. I certainly know solfege, and it does have its advantages. Those advantages being that there are specific syllables for every chromatic note, right? So let's say we're in F. So do is, of course, or let's go to C, right? Because that's going to be easier for people to understand. So if it's C natural, that's do, right? But if it's C sharp, that's going to be called D, right? So we're going to raise all of the syllables. When they're a raised syllable, we're going to call it an E sound. And when we lower them, we're going to make them an eh sound. Now, because re is already an A sound, when we lower that one, it becomes ra. Okay, so do, D, re. If we lower re, it becomes ra. If we raise re, it becomes re. Okay, 3 is mi. If we lower mi, it becomes may. If we can't raise mi. But if we go to 4, that's fa. If we raise 4, it's fi. 5 is sol, of course, but if we lower it, it's se. If we raise it, it's si. Right? La, if we lower it, becomes lay. If we raise it, is li. T, if we lower it, becomes te. Okay, so let's see, is that all of the syllables? Do, D, or ra, re, re, or may, mi, fa, fi, or, 'si', that's definitely useful. If you get that stuff together and get it real comfortable, it's definitely helpful. I just came up singing the numbers. So when you sing numbers, there are two solutions to chromatic notes. And neither of them is really ideal, but either of them work. So you can either sing the modification and trust that you know what number it's supposed to be, or you can sing the number and trust that you know what the modification is supposed to be, right? So if I'm trying to sing from 1 to flat 3, right, you could sing 1 flat, or, and trust that you know it's the 3, or you could sing 1 to 3 and trust that you know it's flat. 1, 3. Either way, like I said, is not really ideal. When you sing do, me, it's a little bit more specific, right? But I just honestly haven't practiced that enough to use it so much. Let's see here. Anyway, so one other just little thing about solfege that I'll say is that movable do all the way. I understand the utility behind fixed do if you speak a language where the solfege syllables are the pitch's literal names, but if you speak English, movable do is the only way that it makes any sense. Because the whole point of solfege, or singing the numbers or anything, is to hear the relationships of all of the notes to the tonic that you're in right now. And so if you're in the key of A flat, but C is still do, that just makes no sense to me whatsoever in terms of it being useful as an ear training device. So, anyway, yeah, singing it broke me of my fingeritis habits. That's absolutely true. So when you sing, this is something that I'm sure a lot of you know about already, but if you're a horn player, right, you have to take a breath every now and then. Piano players and guitar players are really bad about just playing these long lines that last forever because we never think about taking a breath. But if you sing what you play, that forces you to phrase things more like a horn player. So like, if I'm going to play on giant steps a little bit, I might play. See, I lost it right there at the end. If you notice, if you scroll back on the playback, at right there in the last couple of bars, I played a note that wasn't what I sang, right? So I missed it. Need to practice a little bit more. Anyway, has anybody got any other questions that I can answer? Oh, of course. We haven't gotten to any substitutions yet. So the main thing that we need to look at is playing on the tritone. So one great way that we can find a tritone sub sound is to play a minor chord up a half step on the 5 chord. And this is, to me, a much better way of thinking about it than what the rest of sort of jazz academia is going to want to call the altered scale. So if I'm on D7 here, I think E flat minor 6. That's going to give me the flat 9, and the flat 13. Right, so we've got the root, the third, the 7th, flat 9, and the flat 13. don't want to think about it as the altered scale as D altered, where I'm playing, because it's going to sound like that if I'm playing like that. I mean, not that that's the worst sound in the world, but it's not very, I don't hear Charlie Parker playing it. And again, it's not that Charlie Parker is the only thing that you want to do. You only want to imitate Charlie Parker. But man, Bird's just so good, you know. It feels good playing lines like that work out on the changes. Anyway, I don't want to rant about that too much. But so if we're playing these tritones, right? When we play that E flat minor over the D7, what is that? The tritone of D7 is A flat 7, right? And remember Barry's thing about the important minor that you find on the 5th of a 5 chord? Well, what is that on A flat 7? It's E flat minor, or E flat minor 6, right? So if we play that E flat minor 6 over the D7, we're playing the sound of the tritone sub, right? It doesn't have anything to do with D altered. It's that we're playing a different sound on top of it, a different dominant chord, right? So instead of playing down the D7 sound, resolving into G7, we're playing the tritone of D7, which is A flat 7. Resolving into that G. Let's see what happens if I play on A minor 7, I'm going to play D7. And on D7, I'm going to play the tritone, A flat 7. So how am I going to get there? A minor 7, I'm going to be thinking about my A minor triad. D7, I'm going to be thinking E flat minor triad. Getting back to that G7 or G6. Yeah, so the basic concept, Tony, is that what's in the rhythm section, or what's in the left hand, is a simpler no, excuse me. The rhythm section is playing a different harmonization from what the soloist is thinking. And so as a piano player, we have to deal with both of those things at the same time. So we have to comp like what the rhythm section changes are doing, and then we're playing the substitutions above it in the right hand like a horn player would be playing. So, okay, I'm playing A minor 7, thinking about that A minor triad, or maybe even just anything from the scale. Then when I get to D7, playing E flat minor, resolving into G. So let's try and play that sub on all of the 5 chords, right? So if we're on B major 7, I'm going to go to the E flat minor over the D7, resolve into G, B flat 7, thinking about that B minor sound, into the E flat. A little bit out sounding. You really have to have the chord under it. Still a pretty sound though. So anyway, I hope that gives you some things to practice on this tune. Shows you that it's really not all that difficult to play on. It's just about thinking about the key centers, thinking about the approaches into the tonic chords of those key centers. It's pretty easy. You just got to practice a little bit. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. I want to let everyone know, if you're not aware, that Barry has moved his masterclass online to Zoom, because obviously with the corona crisis, he can't have his class in person right now. So I highly recommend that everyone sign up for his class. I just took one today. It was great, a lot of fun. I'm not sure when he'll be doing another one, but I will try and make sure to put in a post on my channel here to remind you. So thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon. All right. Yeah, I know, Tony. I know it's different from the way that things are taught nowadays, but what I like about it is that it's the way that cats used to think, and so it just ends up sounding more authentic. To me, ends up sounding more authentic than thinking about an altered scale. You know, yes, technically the notes are the same, but just psychologically, there's something about it that really makes me think differently when I'm thinking about that E flat minor chord. Anyway, I'll talk more about that next time, I guess. So thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Appreciate it.